What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. I am your host, Pat Finley. I am joined by co-host 2 weeks in a row. He must be sick or just crazy. I don't know which, but Rich is back, and we have a very special guest, John Faust, with us. But first, big shout out to Viper from Refrigeration Technologies. They're sponsoring the show again tonight. If you don't know what Viper is, you're kind of missing out. They are NSF-rated chemicals for cleaning refrigeration equipment, from your condensers to your evaporators. They make nylon, they make big blue leak detectors, they make heat shield products. Check them out. Viper has everything you need for cleaning coils and commercial refrigeration work. So what is going on, fellas?
Another day, bro. Another day. And before we get into it, though, I want to properly introduce John because, as most of y'all know, I don't respect a whole lot of people, but John is in the handful of people I do respect. He's not that far from me. He's out of Columbia. I'm in Greenville, so we're give or take an hour and a half, from each other. And we've sometimes had some crossover. We collab from here to there, and I mean, he's just been real cool. A lot of integrity. So I'm glad to have him on the show.
Well, and likewise, Rich is it's an ever-evolving world, the service industry, and a lot of the leadership has changed, which kind of trickles down to the other, to the guys below the leadership. Rich has impressed me from day one with his work ethic, his work quality, and his integrity. And it's just, I'm not going to say it's rare to find. There's a lot of great technicians out there, but I will tell you that Rich has stood out among the very best of the people that I've worked with over the,
Yeah,
and appreciate that.
In the short time I've known Rich, I can tell he's a stand-up guy. A lot of people don't like him sometimes because he can be a little brash or aggressive. But
I was gonna say that y'all are a part of the 4 people that like me. Feels nice.
So funny story is, me and Rich, we met in person finally. We smoked some cigars, drank some beers in South Carolina in this little bitty town. Somehow had a cigar bar, but we met up and we were talking, and his wife was talking to my wife, and she goes, "I'm really surprised he actually likes Pat." I was like, "Wow, that must mean something." So I feel pretty honored there.
Well, it probably worked because I'm a little brash under the surface myself as well. So I had to put on my best face for a podcast, obviously. But I think that's one of the reasons that Rich and I connect.
I would say so.
So let's talk about. Let's get an introduction, who you are, what you do, and then we'll just get right into it.
All right. Are you asking? Asking?
Yeah. So, where are you from, and who do you work for? What do you do? Let's just start there, and then we'll get a little of the history behind that.
All right. So, the bulk of my life has been spent in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm a second generation in the family business. My father started this in 1989. I couldn't stand it when I was a kid. Everybody else got their summers off. Summer between 8th and 9th grade is when my father started, and I was underneath a house with about 6 inches of crawl space, digging a ditch because that was the only way to get the air handler out of there. And I remember coming out covered in filth, and my dad said to me that if you don't want to do this the rest of your life, boy, go to college. And I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. So left, went to college, ran out of money for college, joined the Air Force to get the money to finish college, got out of the Air Force, started doing software development for a market research firm, and left that when my ex-wife wanted to go to grad school in Charlotte to work for the Hilton Hotels Corporation, taking care of their IT networks in Charlotte, the Hilton, Doubletree, Embassy Suites, their whole suite of hotel chains. And that was great work, but I can't stand death by meeting, and that's what a lot of that was. There's a lot of sitting behind a computer, a lot of making things happen that, maybe I didn't quite see the value in. Maybe somebody else saw the value in it, but I was doing a lot of things that just didn't leave me with a sense of satisfaction. 9/11 rolls around. At that point, Charlotte's a big banking town. A lot of people lost their jobs. There were 150 people a month applying for my job, and it wasn't even a posted position. And I never really felt like my job was in jeopardy, but when you have 150 people a month applying for your job, it's only a matter of time before you think that, somebody's willing to work for half of what you're willing to work for. This whole time, my father's been asking me to come back to the family business. So left the IT world, came back to the family business, took a monstrous pay cut to do so. And for the last 23 years, I've been taking the best of what my father brought to the business and the best of what I know. And we've been, together we built a pretty strong brand, and he retired a few years ago, and we're taking it up from there. We became distributors for Electro. If you're not familiar with Electro Freeze makes soft serve, slush, basically frozen treats for just about every ice cream shop you can imagine, but they're also in every Sonic, every Whataburger, every Arby's. The list goes on and on. They're a pretty big brand, and they've done well for us, and we like to think that we've done well for them, and it's kind of where we are now.
Yeah, I seen Electro Freeze at Arby's this weekend, and I was like, hey, I better get on it and make sure I get them lined up. I know you had some pretty funny posts last week with some songs you were playing around with one of the apps. You were making some rap songs and stuff, and I was like, we got to have him on here. We've talked about it in the past, and I seen that Electro Freeze. I was like, nope, we got to make it happen. I seen it, now I got to do it. So I'm glad to finally have you on. We met in person at a show. We talked quite a bit. And, you're really passionate about this industry and about what it's done for you over the years. Like you said, you took a pay cut to come back to the family business, and you've really worked to grow it. And to pick up Electro Freeze and Electro Freeze of the Carolinas, you guys are you're killing it out there, man.
I appreciate that.
I know you're instrumental in you helped Rich with a lot of stuff, and I know Rich really has a lot of respect for you and what you've done and grown over there. So hats off.
Hey, thanks. I very much appreciate it. But not to sound all cliche, but it's not a one person thing. You got to have guys like Rich in your corner. The technicians that work with me, those guys are fantastic. They're those guys they won't just leave because it's 5 o'clock. They'll stay until they've got the problem figured out. There's a lot of integrity in those guys, and I have a huge amount of respect for them. And I couldn't be in the position that I'm in without their help and without the help of guys like Rich, who on the outside of my company, who lead with integrity and have work ethic that is clearly visible to their customers.
That kind of lends, to how do you balance running, both Troubleshooter Mechanical and Electro Freeze of the Carolinas? That's a lot going on.
I'm not going to lie to you. It's a monstrous challenge. And we've only been distributors for them for a little over 2 years. So I've spent a great deal of time this particular year working on a lot of foundational things so that as we go into the next calendar year, not just me and my company, but the subcontractors and the people we partner with are set up for success. Because if you would have asked me a couple of years ago if I wanted to be a distributor for Electro Freeze, the answer would have been a clear no. This was more my father's idea than mine. Ice cream machines, typically speaking, when you walk into them, they've left the mix in there for a week. They're gross. People don't take care of them. And I honestly wasn't that thrilled at the proposition. But then I went to the factory and I met the key players. I could name off a list of names, but from the leadership on down to the engineers. One of the things, let me just sidetrack for a second. This is one of the biggest things that I've seen with the engineers at Electro Freeze that you don't see with a lot of other distributors. When you have a change that you see in the field, something that you feel like needs to be addressed with the equipment, and as service technicians, I know all three of us have seen this. We're like, why did the engineer build it this way? This is ridiculous. Well, Electro Freeze is great because they've got a team of engineers that actually listens to feedback from the service technicians, from the customers that they have, and they make design changes that are they make it a lot easier for everybody involved, from the service technician to the end user. Because when you're dropping the kind of money these machines cost, you don't want something that's going to take some guy 3 hours to scratch his head on when he gets out there. Or, he's got to change a solenoid coil, but you can't get to it without taking out the beater motor, or something like along those lines. The way that they're structured at Electro Freeze in every possible department impressed me immediately the first time I went up there. So when they offered us roles as distributors, I jumped on the opportunity. Now, managing that with the troubleshooter side of things, which is a lot closer to what I assume that you guys do on a day-to-day basis, where you're working on everything in the kitchens. That definitely is a challenge. It's a lot of hats to wear, because you're, on the one hand, you're trying to grow one side of the business that's new, and on the other side. You're trying to make sure that you maintain the legacy and the quality that you've earned over pushing 4 decades with the customers. And we have customers that we've had 30 plus years. So keeping those guys satisfied is a top priority for us. So if I had to answer your question shortly, the only way I can really balance it is to make sure that when I come home, I shut up as much as I can about the business and focus on my family, focus on the things that need attention here in my home, so that when I go back to work the next day, I can give 100% during the time that I'm there to my customers, to Electro Freeze, to the people I collaborate with the industry, and to the employees that are working with me.
Nice. How many employees do you have working underneath you?
So we have 13 in-house techs, and then we have office staff, 4 full-time office staff. So, and then we have a network of subcontractors throughout North and South Carolina, because it's 86,000 square miles. It's a lot of territory to cover. So you got to have you got to be represented well in there. So the subcontractors aren't my employees, but sometimes it kind of feels that way, because you got to, not everybody's like Rich. I'll be honest with you. You got to babysit a little bit sometimes, but they get the job done and the customers are happy at the end of the day. So that's really kind of where I'm at with it.
That's a pretty big market. The Carolinas
it's huge. Yeah.
State. They don't, you don't think of them being that big, but I mean, east to west, they're pretty big. And then that's a humongous swath to cover.
Oh yeah. There's several times I've had to go on service calls where it's 7 hours one way. So nobody really thinks the Carolinas being that big till they get behind the wheel of a car, and then they learn quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time I drive to Sefesa, I'm like, it's a boring part.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, you're in Indiana. It's you go from Brown County to Fort Wayne. That's like going to 4 different states. So
yeah, I had those days, man. Going far east or far west the same day, yep. It's just part of it. I mean, a lot of guys complain about driving, and I look at it this way: I make just as much money sitting behind the wheel as I do fixing something. So I get paid to drive. I get paid to drive. It is what it is.
That's what I've always
said.
And
it's what you do with that drive time too that I find matters a great deal. When you're behind the wheel of a car a lot, that's a perfect opportunity to, HVAC school. I love that. Their podcast and series. I listen to a lot of their stuff. I listen to a lot of audiobooks on leadership and entrepreneurship and, things of that nature. Dave Burke, for instance, with Echelon Front, if you're not familiar with those guys, highly recommend reading those books. There's Jocko Willink, if you're not familiar with them, former Navy SEALs, they run business. When you're behind the wheel, that's an opportunity to learn. You can, listen to the same 7 songs over and over on the radio if you want, or you can, grow yourself as a leader, grow yourself as a technician, grow yourself as a, customer service provider. There's, it's what you do with your time that matters.
Yeah, I've listened to all of Jocko's books multiple times, David Goggins' books multiple times. I mean, I've listened to all of them. But, I listen to a lot of, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I listen to a lot of, entrepreneurial stuff just because it does translate over. And
I was about to say, I think you're kind of cutting yourself there short. Half the reason I'm on this podcast, despite being incredibly camera shy, is that, like Rich, I've been impressed with what I see on LinkedIn with what you do. I mean, it's a lot of people just kind of, they see this job as something to go in, clock in, and at the end of the day, clock out, and that's it. And that you don't seem to have that approach. And it's very commendable.
Leadership is leadership, regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not. Regardless of if you're even managing a team or not. You know what I mean? Especially when you're one of the top guys at your branch, or probably in your case, the top guy at your branch. You still got to have leadership, which is something that for sure you've got and you demonstrate.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I try. I mean, some days I don't want to try, and I still try, but I think that's the truth of everybody, though. There's probably days Rich is like, what did I get myself into this for? And some days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me too. But at the first of the month, that mortgage payment comes due, and then I remember why.
You remember why? Yep.
Yeah. When I started doing refrigeration, I was like, why am I doing this? And I've been doing refrigeration 17 years now, and I'm still like, why did I decide I wanted to do this? Like, I had it made before just doing outside.
Yeah. I don't know. Outside is that's a different animal too. It only takes a few fryers before you're like, well, I want to go back to refrigeration.
I started over there, so it doesn't bother me. But like we have guys that done like refrigeration only, or like HVAC only, and then they come try to work on fryers or a combi oven. They're like, screw this, I can't do this. I'm like, this ain't even bad yet. I don't know what you're crying about.
Oh, when they start crying about the grease.
Well, and that's kind of what to piggyback on that a little bit. One of the things that I look for in my technicians is the willingness to try. Every one of us is a moron the first time we work on something.
Oh, yeah.
You get a piece of equipment, you get a Cavotherm C4 ET. The first time you look at that, all the instructions are in German. It's, a lot of it doesn't make sense, but I think Henry Ford said it, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That's 100% true. So I look for guys that are, I've said this before to other people, you always hire for attitude because you can teach skill. You can't teach attitude. So you talk about fryers, fryer for all intents and purposes is literally no different than most residential gas furnaces. It's just that instead of heating air, you're heating oil and somebody's getting the cheese stick out of the deal. So when I got guys who are like, man, I don't know nothing about working on fryers, those guys don't last very long because, if you don't want to work on fryers and I got a guy that does, great, I'll send that guy. But every now and then, you're going to have to get your hands dirty on a fryer because that's what the customer needs. That customer pays our bills. Those bills pay your bills. Your family depends on that. So instead of thinking of it as a dirty fryer, think of it as, the softball uniform you're buying for your daughter.
Yeah, I started off on hot side and worked in the refrigeration HVAC, and so the grease doesn't bother me because that's all I've known. But the cool thing is, I look at a gas valve on a fryer, I'm like, it's the same gas valve on this rooftop unit. And then I look at a burner on a South Bend oven, I was like, it's the same in-shop burner it's on a Carrier rooftop unit. I'm like, it's the same exact burner.
Yeah.
The same parts.
Exactly.
It just does a different thing on something else. I'm like, and I think once you realize that and you can put that connection together, you can fix anything.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people would rather cry than try. You know what I mean? They've never seen it before. They're not familiar with it. So they'd rather complain. I'm like, yo, shut up and try first, bro. Just shut up and try. I don't care if you screw it up. Just shut up and try. And then we can get you out of a screw up. I can't get you out of, being a crybaby, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you learn so much more from your mistakes than you ever do from your successes.
Yep.
And the guys who, who are willing to tackle it head on or are not embarrassed about making a mistake here and there, those are the guys who become your long-term assets. Hands down. Yeah. I can tell you 3 guys in my company right now that are fantastic at that. When they first started, they didn't know a great deal. And now I wouldn't trade those technicians for anybody you guys could offer me.
Yeah. I remember when I first started, I still remember days, the things I screwed up. And I still remember to this day. And I tried telling, both my boys work with me and one of their friends works with me. And I tried telling them, look, I'm telling you this because I did this. I screwed up. Don't do this. And sometimes they don't listen. Sometimes they listen, and sometimes it's best for them to let them screw it up themselves. I'm like, oh yeah, you told me not to do that, and I did it anyways, and it didn't work. Well, yeah, I told you for a reason, idiot.
Exactly. Sometimes when I'm training and I see the mistake about to happen, I just sit back and let it happen. You know what I mean? Because as long as it's not going to cost anything, it's not going to cause any real damage. Oh, you'll never make that mistake again. We're cool.
So I screwed up this week. Yesterday, I had my trainee with me, and he was pulling the burner assembly out of a Lincoln oven, and it has a hot surface igniter, glow igniter. I was like, okay. And I wasn't paying attention. I was playing on my phone, and I heard tink, and something hit the ground. And I was like, I looked over. I was like, oh, he just broke that hot surface igniter. Sure enough, it hit the conveyor motor, and he moved a little bit, just put enough pressure on it, and snapped it right off. I was like, did you just break that hot surface igniter? He's like, is that what this is? I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah. We had to change the solenoid valve. I was like, okay. I said, took the other one off, looked at the part number on there, looked at United, the same exact one for a furnace, So I was like, okay, put this gas valve on there. Do not put this back in. I'll be back in 15 minutes. And I went and spent $25 of my own money, bought a hot surface igniter at United Refrigeration, and stuck it in that Lincoln oven, and it fired right up.
Wow. There you go.
But that was my mistake. Not watching him. I was just, playing on my phone, being lazy. And I was like, that's on me. That's not, that's not on Lincoln. That's not on the customer. Be down for 3 more days waiting on that. That's not on my company to pay for that. It's on me. So I owned it. Right. I bought a $25 hot surface igniter and stuck it in there, and away she went. So,
see, and you won't make that mistake again.
No, I'll definitely watch him when he's never pulled something out before. That's for damn sure.
Well, and if you've got a good trainee, he's probably learned, way more than $25 worth out of that particular interaction. So, money well spent.
Yeah, it was just funny. He was like, "Is that what this is?" I was like, "Yeah, that's what that was." 4 pieces. It just made a distinctive crack when they break. And I was like, I just heard it. I was like, "Oh, I know what he did. I'm screwed."
You're like, I've done that before.
Oh yeah. And then he was like, I was putting a new one in. He was like trying to touch it. I was like, "Do not touch that with your bare hands, dude." I was like, "I got gloves on for a reason. It's not because I want to stay clean."
Well, now that's where you and I might be different. Every time I work on anything hot side, I break out the Tyvek suit. I may look like a moron, man, but there's only so many Wendy's floors you can lay on coming home smelling like French fries before you break out the Tyvek suit.
My worst store I ever worked in was I used to do a lot of Red Lobster, and they wanted us first AM. And I always said I walked out there smelling like a dirty old prostitute. And it smelled all day, and then it's stuck in your van.
Yeah,
dude. The sole reason I wear gloves is because of McDonald's. When I started doing work at McDonald's, their grills and fryers were so greasy, I couldn't hold on to my tools. So I had to start wearing gloves just to be able to grip my tools. And working on one of those McDonald's grills, you can go through 4 pair of gloves easily.
Yeah,
they're the sole reason I even wear gloves.
Your tools don't rust there, though.
Yeah,
that's true. You know, the downside, and Rich, you might have come across, I don't know how many ice cream machines you worked on, Pat, but if you think the grease is bad, wait till the first time you go to a pressurized ice cream machine with weak old mix in it, and you don't release the pressure slowly enough, and then the rest of the day you smell like, I think a dirty gym sock is probably too generous.
So thankfully, because of that $500 cleaning fee, we don't run into any of those.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the things. So my father is one of those old school guys. I remember when I was a kid, he was that whatever it takes to get the job done. I remember him taking contactors apart and filing down, pitted contacts and putting them back in because it was just a different world back then than it is now. So he's one of those guys that he would walk into a restaurant and, if the customer hadn't cleaned it out, he would just say, "I can't do that." We have a lot of customers that will take advantage of that. So, generally speaking, and it doesn't work for every customer, but we have a cleaning fee of $500, and that's what Rich is talking about. I think that when you show up, if you've left mix in the machine, we're charging you $500 to clean the machine before we start charging for the bill, and the technicians are going to get half of that right off the bat. And that's not because we're trying to gouge the customer, but when you tell them it's $500 to clean the machine, all of a sudden they find somebody to clean the machine before you get there. So it's less about making money off of that cleaning and more about them understanding that, our guys, they got riches and they fix things, but they're people too. And if you don't want to deal with it, they don't want to either. And that's not what their job is. They're not janitors at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's more about not having to clean it. It's not like, oh, I want to walk in and charge you a $500 fee. I'd rather not charge you and walk into a clean machine, honestly.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I just suck it up and do it most days. Now, occasionally there's some days where I'll walk away from something. I tried walking away from an ice machine last week, and it just keeps biting me in the ass because we keep going back. And I finally told him, I was like, sell them an evaporator plate because that's the only way I'm going to get this thing clean is to cut the evaporator out and clean out behind. I'll clean anything generally for the most part. If it's in Moses, I guess I haven't touched an ice cream machine that I've mixed in it for over a week, so that may be a different story.
Yeah, the first time you do that, you probably won't suck it up anymore. When you go there and that pressurized like rot hits you in the face, you'll have a very different opinion on that cleaning fee.
Does it come out like cottage cheese?
Oh man, if I could share pictures with you right now, I'd send you. Well, I had one the other day where I pulled the head off this machine, and I asked the young lady, when was the last time you cleaned the machine? And she goes, "Oh, I clean it twice a week." And there was just no way. There was mix. There was slime mold between the hopper and the cylinder. And when I took the head off, cottage cheese. It was literally full of cottage cheese. And I asked her how she cleaned the machine. She takes a rag and she starts wiping down the front of the machine. That was her cleaning process. Like, no, young lady, let me show you how to do this the right way. And the whole reason the machine didn't work was the fact that mix couldn't go from the hopper to the cylinder because of the slime mold in the cylinder.
Oh my god!
But we got her trained up and showed her how to do it the right way. So thankfully, that shouldn't be much of a problem for that location anymore.
So you still go out and run calls, huh?
Oh, without a doubt. You can't. I do not believe in asking your guys to do something you're not willing to do yourself, because there's a lot of people in this industry, especially since private equity's hit, that you got a lot of guys who've never turned a wrench in their entire life, calling the shots for the guys who are in the trenches, making them money. And I'm not going to say I don't respect that. There is a place for that. But I will say I have a lot more respect for, let's take Rich here. I got a feeling that Rich is eventually going to move a little less out of, he'll be in the field a little bit less, and he'll be in the office a little bit more. He'll be in front of customers, making sure the relationships are good more. But at the end of the day, he started in the trenches. He knows exactly what every one of those technicians is going through on a day-to-day basis. He knows the demands of, you can't have a guy working on a fryer at 12 o'clock on a Friday in the middle of lunch rush. He knows the intricacies that you can only learn by being in the field, getting your hands dirty, having a tool belt with a little grease on it, So part of it is about making sure that I maintain the guys that work with me, to make sure that I maintain their respect. So I still take the on-call schedule when it rolls around for me, despite answering the phone 24 hours a day. And the other side of that too, as well, outside of, maintaining the relationships with your technicians and your customers, is maintaining your skills, because I don't need to tell you guys, this industry changes every 5 minutes. And if you're not out in front of the equipment all the time, you will fall behind. You'll be a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Know it.
Yeah, I get asked all the time, to be a full-time trainer or do this and that. I'm like, no. I'm like, I won't be able to stay relevant. You can't, if you're not out here in the field watching this stuff change. I mean, the changes I've seen in 20 years, I can't imagine the changes we've seen in 40 years. What we're going to see in 5 years with AI, robots, all this other stuff coming in. You're going to have to stay out there to stay relevant and stay,
Yeah, I've seen service managers that, haven't been in the field for 10 years. And it's like, you've got no clue what's going on in the field or in the industry or any of that. I mean, at my last job, one time I had to tell my service manager, I'm like, bro, like, can we just take the 134A off my truck? I'm like, I never use 134A. And he could not believe that we didn't use 134A anymore. I'm like, bro, it's like 290 or 404. That's where we're at when it comes to small refrigeration. But he was like, no way. There's no way. I'm like, dude, check the last 4 times we done inventory, I've gone down by like a pound of 134A. Like, what are you not seeing? But that's one of the things.
Well, to be fair, a pound of 134A is like 10 reach-ins, so you're good to go.
I mean, yeah, you got me there, but yeah.
Part of them still use it in their freaking glycol units, man. I was working on one today, brand new unit, 134A. I'm like, how are you still putting out brand new 134A systems?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I don't know the last time I've actually seen a 134A system like that, to be honest with you, because we've got a lot of like Randell, Delfield, Charleston. So if they're not newer 290, they're pretty much 404.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I've seen increasingly? I've seen 3 of them now in the last 6 months, where we go behind other companies where they're literally. I can't really hate on the guys because it's working, but they're taking 290 systems, putting in service ports, and dropping 134A as in a replacement. And condenser coil size to me seems like it'd be too small, but I can't hate on the guys because it's working.
Yeah, the efficiency is so far down.
It's cooling it, but it's not really working. I mean, who is it? Is it Chris Stevens, HVACR videos? He actually has one. I think he did 404 in a 410 in a 290 system. And when you look at the superheat, the subcooling, all that stuff's way off. The head pressure is way higher than it needs to be. I want to say there was for sure flood back going to the compressor. So it'll cool, but I mean, they're destroying the system when they do it. I mean, would I do it to get somebody through a weekend? It's a busy weekend for a college bar and that's all we got. I probably get them through the weekend, but I am going to try to go back, Monday or Tuesday and pull it back out and throw 290 in it. That's, my approach to it.
I did see someone go to the local small hardware store and buy a propane camping thing and use here recently.
Yeah, I mean,
when you're nowhere near anywhere that sells R290, I guess you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
There's that.
That is part of our job. You know what I mean? Like the bulk of our job is fixing stuff properly, but part of our job is making it work so customers can get through. Because when you're doing commercial, I mean, it's all about the money, you know what I mean, that the customer's making. And for example, a college bar over the weekend can make, enough money to replace their beer cooler 5 times. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're not gonna care about compressing trashing the compressor for a few days.
Well, that's kind of how it is with ice cream machines too. Like for instance, one of our major chains, 22% of their income is off of that ice cream machine in the store.
Oh wow.
So when you have an ice cream machine down on a Friday and not getting it back up till Monday or Tuesday, that's a significant chunk of that revenue. And when you think about it, how much labor and raw materials like natural gas does it take to assemble a burger versus pulling a handle on an ice cream machine? You've done this, you've got X number of dollars in a bag of mix, but you're getting, Y number of dollars out of that bag of mix. So yeah, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get them through the weekend. Going back to that, I've actually seen a lot of that with guys dropping 22 in on 290 because it's relatively close. But all I can think is, man, you just dumped $200 worth of refrigerant in that system, and
Well, I mean, R290, I think we sell it for like $14-15 an ounce. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it adds up if and it's just wild to think. But yeah, I mean, I see people do some weird stuff and it works. But like, Rich said, your efficiency's gone. It may run, your metering device isn't set up right. So your superheat subcooling's all jacked up. But if you can get them through a weekend, you got to do what you got to do. Now, I've never worked on anything electro-free. So are they pretty simple? I mean, you said they're pretty serviceable. They like to, listen to the people like Rich and you out in the field. So are they pretty simple, or are they full of a bunch of crazy electronic controls? Or
no? So if I had to summarize what it's like to work on electro-free products, they've got a very vast, very diverse product line. But it all basically boils down to 3 different types of machines. You have gravity-fed machines, pressurized machines, and slush machines. You don't have a lot of the common problems that you have with, for instance, rooftop package units, especially lately. A lot of manufacturers go into paper thin coils, and they don't clean the condensers, so head pressure shoots sky high. Some jack leg has jumped out the high pressure switch, and the next thing you know, you've got a blown coil in the middle of summer with a 6-week back order on that thing, and you're having to repair that. You don't really have that problem with electro-freeze because the engineers build this incredibly robust. They got thick copper. It's rare that you find leaks on these machines, and if you do, it's almost always in the same spot. And again, the factory is addressing that because they get enough reports from the people in the field that they address these common issues. What you see with electro-freeze is the learning curve is a little bit difficult for some people because the refrigeration cycles, like it is in just anything else. The closest analog I can think of is an ice machine. Your evaporator in an ice cream machine is the cylinder. Once you learn the basics of, perfect example, Sonic. They typically use a GES 5420, which is a 2-barrel machine. It's got 2 compressors, one for each hopper, and then a smaller compressor for the cabinet. If you've learned that machine, you've learned almost every pressurized machine that electro-freeze has. They just make, some models have a single cylinder. Some of them have what they call a VQM, virtual quality management, which is where you can control a lot of the functions from a computer, and some of them are the older mechanical styles. But if you're familiar with any commercial refrigeration, it's not that incredibly difficult to learn how to work on these machines. It's all the same problems over and over. You have a bad contactor. You have a push button switch that's worn out. You've got to adjust your superheat, evaporator, pressure regulator. It's all the same things over and over and over again. And once you get down these 3 basic machines that they've got, you've got their entire product line pretty much figured out. As long as you can read a schematic, and there's some incredible guys at the factory. I'll tell you right off the bat, there's a guy named Cody and there's a guy named Jesse. If you ever call for technical support, either one of those guys is going to knock it out of the park because they know these machines in a way that, I work on them every day and I'll never know what these guys know. So it's, having that factory support and having a little bit of basic refrigeration knowledge, anybody can tackle these machines. Just most people don't want to.
I would say, with me being relatively newer to electro-freeze, you need to be, I would say, stronger in electrical troubleshooting than actual refrigeration troubleshooting to be good at them. Because yeah, the refrigeration is all very basic. You just need, you should be good at reading schematics and following components and knowing how electrical components function. That's been my experience so far.
So what's the main refrigerant you guys that Electro Freeze is using right now? We had someone ask as well. I'm asking.
So right now, the vast majority of the units are using 404 in the cylinders and 134 in the cabinets. But obviously, that's changing. I can't tell you the exact date that they're making the switch, but they're moving to. Oh gosh, you put me on the spot. I can't remember which refrigerants they were telling me they were switching to, but it's early 2026. They're having to move to some of the newer refrigerants.
Right. One of the three 454s probably.
Yeah.
A, B, or C. I know. Well, A or C. I think B is comfort. I think A is just depends on the volume. I think so.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's good to know. So if someone was wanting to go into business for themselves or take over a family business, what would one piece of advice you'd give that person?
I mean, it depends on where you are in your journey. So obviously I took this business over from my father. The name Troubleshooter came from the fact that my father had a reputation at the companies he worked for prior to working for himself. They called him the troubleshooter. When nobody else could figure it out, he was the guy that figured it out. He would stick with a problem until he got it solved. Great example, his very first customer, and the one that we treat with kid gloves today, is at our local airport. It's a private aviation company, and they had a building automation system. This is 30 plus years ago, but they had a building automation system go out, and the board was not going to be available for quite some time. And so basically the company he was working for was like, well, there's nothing we can do for you. That wasn't good enough for my father, so he took probably 2 boxes worth of relays and wired up the entire system with these relays. And those relays are still sitting on the wall today. The building's still being run off those relays 30 plus years later. I tell you that to lead into the next part is understanding that, yeah, our industry is changing. A lot of it is, there's a lot of automation. There's a lot of electronics where before it was, electromechanical. It's easy to look at the old timers like my dad and be like, oh, well, you're out of date. But then you forget that those guys, they forged the path that we're walking right now. Like I hope that we're going to do for the generation that follows us. They've seen things that we can't, I told you earlier about them filing the contactors, the points on the contactors down. Who does that today? Nobody. That's what you had to do back in that era, to get things up and running, because you didn't always, back then you had to know the answer. These days you have to know where to find the answer. And that's a big difference between the way that they did things and the way that we do things. So going back to the family business is understanding that, yeah, when you're in a family business, you have to not be afraid to innovate and move forward, but you also have to respect where you came from and who got you to where you are today, and understand that they learned a lot of hard lessons that they're passing on to you, and you're learning a lot of hard lessons that, your kids, whoever, takes over your business when you decide to move on, hopefully they learn those exact same lessons from you. So it's about running a family business at the end of the day is understanding that when my father still worked in the office from 7:30 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, he wasn't dad. He was my boss. I work with some of my siblings and my uncle and the business as well. From the time that we clock in, those guys are, they're not the guys I see at the Thanksgiving table. Mm-hmm. They're the guys, who are helping to elevate the brand and to make sure that and thankfully I don't really have much of an issue with that. Everybody is kind of on the same page, but running a family business basically boils down to understanding and defining the roles, and understanding that, when that guy gets mad at you, he's getting mad at you because he's your boss and you're falling short of what you're supposed to do. He's not getting mad at you because he's your dad and you're his son. And making that delineation early and quickly goes a long way into ensuring that you have a mature business that can actually thrive later and is not just a bunch of, what is that show, Pawn Stars or whatever, where they had all the the dads fighting with each other all the time. You can't have that environment because it's bad not only for you and whoever you're arguing with, but for everybody who's not part of the family, the blood family anyway. Kind of checking emotions at the door when you clock in the morning. I guess if I had to summarize your whole question in one statement, that'd be it. Clock your emotions at the door and understand that you're there to perform a job. And if the guy you're working for happens to be your dad and he's mad at you, it has less to do with you being the son and more about the fact that he's trying to preserve a legacy and he doesn't feel that you're preserving it the way that he wants it preserved. And you have to respect that because they came first.
Yeah, I bet Rich is feeling that. You got his boys. I bet you're feeling that. You got your boys working with you, working for you. I mean,
yep. We're good with that separating family from business thing too. I mean, even to the point, and I think I might have mentioned this before that so my senior techs are my kids, direct supervisors. There's no going to dad, and then there's also no when like my oldest son didn't clean an ice machine properly. It wasn't me going to him, hey, what happened? It was me going to the guy that was supposed to be training him, saying, bro, what happened? And him and my son working out, what happened, and then going back and making it right. So thankfully we've been able to establish that, but it does take being very intentional to establish and keep that.
Well, I don't think it's that hard for you. And I've only met him for a couple of days, but your boys came down to the Electro Freeze training at our shop, and they were some sharp kids, and they were very respectful. So
appreciate that.
I don't see them on a day-to-day basis, but based on my limited interaction, it seems like you got a pretty good set of kids there.
Yeah, we're blessed, but yeah, we do for sure.
Yeah, so my boys work with me. I'm not, I'm just a lead tech. I'm not a supervisor or a manager or anything, and it's hard, even for me, just being lead tech, like separating, that family life versus work life, and I've had to get on them for doing some dumb stuff or, being lazy or cutting corners. And, I go behind them. I'm like, look, you screwed up. And people are like, oh, they just got it made because you're kids. You're not going to get on them. I was like, oh, no, they got it worse. I said, I'll cuss them out. I said, what are they going to do? Tell their mom? they ain't going to run to the boss. They're going to go tell the mom. But, it's a hard thing to do. But I also have a pretty high standard for my kids. And that's the part that's probably not fair, I think, is my standards and goals and expectations for them are far beyond what they should be for this point in their career.
You know what? I don't know if I buy that though, because I think that gives your kids an advantage. Like I said with my dad, and like it sounds like you gentlemen have with your own children, your kids are a reflection of how you raise them. And if you hold them to a higher standard than you hold somebody else, it's because they got your last name. They're going to represent you, and eventually they're going to represent themselves. And as their father, you want them to represent themselves in the best way possible. So,
100%.
Yeah. Well, my dad, when I was younger, I thought my dad was extremely hard on me, which again is part of the reason I left the business before I came back to it. In retrospect, it was probably the single greatest thing anybody's ever done for me. And I feel fairly confident to say that, whatever you're dealing with your kids in the workplaces, and they're probably going to feel the same way.
Yeah, it's the right way to be. Like for me, my kids know that they've got to outwork anybody who they ever work with in the company, because to me that's the only way my kids are going to be respected, especially if they get to the point where they decide to take over the company. It won't be a place where people can look at them and say, oh, this was just handed to you. And we did a big walk-in not that long ago, and we had my guys, my oldest son who's with me for full time, and then my 17-year-old and my 14-year-old. And my 14-year-old put in a 13 or 14-hour day. And the two guys that work for me, the techs I have, were like, holy crap. Like they respect the crap out of them, because even at 14 years old, he put in a day that most grown men won't put in without crying. And he was just at it nonstop the whole day. So I've tried to drive that into my kids. Like, if you're going to work, wherever you work, you got to work hard. But if you're going to work here, you've got to work way harder than anybody else in order to get their respect.
That's a good point. Great outlook, really.
So how many kids do you have, Pat?
I have 3. I have an older daughter. She's a massage therapist. And I have a 23-year-old and 20-year-old son, and they both work with me. And 23-year-old's been doing it a little over 3 years. And 20-year-old's been doing it probably about 14 months or so, 15 months. He graduated high school, took 2 weeks off, came to work with me. The other one went and worked for the city for a little over a year and decided he didn't want to do that and came here. So it's fun. It's exciting to see my kids grow. It sucks to see them struggle because you want to jump in there and save them because they're your kids, but then you're like, no, they just got to struggle and figure it out. That's how I learned. I learn if I keep saving them. So I let them for a while. You know, if they're smart enough to call me and ask me questions, I'm there to help them, but I'm not going to jump in and run over and save them unless it's just like they've been buried in this call all day and like, you know, the boss is getting worried. Then I got to run over and save them. But most of the time they're on their own. Call me. But that's the only thing they have better than anybody else is because they will actually call me. And a lot of the other guys won't call me. They're scared or they don't want to call me, but they'll call me no matter if it's something stupid or not. They'll call me. So
yeah, I think that's a hallmark of a good tech across the board. We've got a lot of guys over the years that, you know, they'll sit on a job 6 hours, scratch their head, and eventually leave. And it's extremely frustrating, man. I've been working on this stuff for a very, very long time, and there's not a single week that goes by that I don't call tech support somewhere because on the other end of that phone, talk about Convatherms earlier. I call Convatherm all the time because I know some of those guys on the end of that phone, they take that exact same call 17 times a day. So I could either spend 5 hours scratching my ass trying to figure it out myself, or I could spend 5 minutes on a phone with a guy who already is going to point me in the right direction. I mean, is there value to figuring it out on your own? Yeah. Is there value when you've got a customer standing over you wanting their oven back and you're billing by the hour? Not so much. So, you know, you can't be a hero all the time. Picking up the phone is probably one of the most important skills you can have in this business.
100%.
I agree. My rule of thumb is if within 20 to 30 minutes, you don't at least have a direction in your mind that you know you need to head, that's when it's time to start calling people. You know, to me, unless you just completely don't know the equipment, don't just call right off rip. You know what I mean? Put some effort into it. But I think if you're confused still after that 30-minute mark, then it's not fair to the customer for you to, you know, sit there scratching your head any longer without trying to call somebody and get some help.
Just don't
it's not fair to every customer behind that that's waiting on you to show up either. So
exactly.
Just don't call tech support on the way and be like, "Hey, I've never worked on this," because tech support's mad at you. If you want to bounce off a coworker, I mean, I'd bounce off a coworker. I don't know if I'd call tech support.
Bro, I've called tech support honestly, and I've never gotten a bad response.
Really?
And I've said, listen, here's the deal. This is the model number. This is the serial number. These are the symptoms. I never worked on it before. I don't want to look like a jackass when I walk in the door. Can you please tell me at least a couple things to look for based on the symptoms? And I would say almost every time I've done that, not that I've done it a lot, they're like, nah, yo, we completely understand. Check this, and this. If that doesn't pan out, give us a call. And I mean, that's worked for me.
But you've probably approached it differently than most guys. Most guys be like, I don't know anything about this. And they just sit there and wait.
Well, see, they usually laugh when I say I don't want to look like a jackass in front of the customer. So I think that's kind of like the icebreaker.
Yeah.
That's funny. So, you know, this industry keeps changing. What do you think the future looks like for the commercial kitchen repair and mechanical contracting, you know, industry in the next 10 years?
Well, second verse, same as the first, man. A lot of the stuff that we've already been talking about, the technology is changing so rapidly that, you know, I mean, if you just talk about refrigerants alone, everything is critical charge now. You can't, you know, in the early days, if this was beer can cold and that one felt like your mama's belly, you were good to go. We're not living in that era anymore.
Yep, just add a little bit to it, and hey, it's good. See you later.
So, you know, being precise, moving to a lot of tools that are a lot higher in precision than what you might have been used to in the past. You know, making use of, you know, if my father was here, he'd probably throw something at me, but making use of digital equipment, digital gauges, manometers, things of that nature allows you to really, you know, coming from an IT background, I'm a very data-driven person. Mm-hmm. My dad was an artist. It was infuriating. Like, he could pull up to a job site, the unit would be on the roof 50 yards away. He could listen and tell you what was going on with it before we even got there. I've never been that guy. I have to go there. I have to put tools on the equipment. I have to get numbers and data and measurement. And that's how I make the calls that I make. Somehow or another, he's able to do what he does with extreme precision, but I think he's an anomaly. So
just experience, man. It comes with, all the hard work he's done over the years and the effort he's put in. Just some of those guys, man, those old timers, dude. The guy I call my dad, he was one of those guys, been in the HVAC industry, refrigeration industry for his entire life. And it's like the things he'd tell you, I'm like, how did you even know that? Or how would you do that? And like, he just walks up and he could fix anything. You're like, how?
Yeah.
It just comes. It's, because of experience and time.
Yeah, it's it's definitely commendable. But like I was saying, though, a lot of that stuff, there's always going to be artists in this industry or in any industry for that matter. But for the rest of us, being precise with your measurements, being thorough with your diagnosis, and if you get there and it starts working all of a sudden, figure out why it's working. Don't just one of the most frustrating things in the world is when a guy's like, well, I got there, I turned the breaker back on, it was fine. I stayed 10 minutes and then I've got to send another guy out away from his family on the weekend because he's on a call. Saturday night at 7:00, I got to send him out there away from his family for something that should have been handled Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon. So going back to your original question, where I see the industry going is a lot more automation, a lot more electronic controls versus electrical controls, and a lot more precision being required. And, if you want to do your job effectively.
Yeah, I love that data point you brought up because, everything electronic, everything, all of my tools are tied to my phone. They're all Bluetooth enabled. They all run on apps. And I like to, hey, I'm pulling a vacuum. Hey, I got to sing down to 373 microns. I screenshot that, put that in the call. Like, hey, if anyone has a question, hey, he did pull it down. Here's a screenshot with the micron gauge, And when it's done, I like to take a screenshot of my pressures when I'm finished up. Okay, this is what it was at when it's down temperature and running. Screenshot that, put that in the file room. This is, operating pressures. I like to have all that data to fall back on, because, sometimes your customers this thing never ran right, or this didn't do this, or, people question what you do. And if you have those pictures there, you have proof of what you did to kind of back it up. So
100% CUI is good for everybody involved.
That's good. And I think while y'all were saying that stuff, technicians need a mindset shift, at least technicians that's been in it, for a while. Because I was thinking about me and my son were on a job site the other day for a walk-in, and I tell him, hand me the gauges. I said, but hand me the regular ones, because for whatever reason I was being lazy. I didn't feel like dealing with my probes. Honestly, I just didn't want too much data. I wanted to know the pressures, add some charge, and get out of there. And he throws the probes at me, and I'm like, no, I said the regular gauges, and he's like, in this day and age, these are the regular gauges. He's like, those other ones are the old school gauges, but he's like, these are the regular gauges now. And I'm like, dang, you're right. You know what I mean? So we do need a mindset shift, because if not, we're going to be left behind as everything's progressing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When I'm training new techs, I make sure to show them how to use an analog gauge, just because, hey, you're going to need to use this. I show them what temperature pressure chart is and how to figure out superheat, subcool, and that kind of stuff. But no one's going to use it. I mean, especially anyone that's lived with a phone in their hand their entire life, they're not going to use that. I mean, I don't care. That's fine. But when you get on the roof and your phone overheats and shuts down, or it's pouring down rain, you don't want to put, you don't want to get out your expensive probes and put on a system in the pouring down rain, or, who knows what's going on. Your batteries die. You got to have a backup system. You got to have a way to still be able to function without, your phone working.
Well, I'm with you 100%. I think, before you're even allowed to have digital gauges, you should have to learn how to use analog gauges and learn how to calculate superheat, subcool, etc. And then you're given the game. It's just like learning square roots when you were learning math back in school. Yeah, you can do it on a calculator in seconds. But if you never were taught the process, do you really even know what you're doing? So,
no. Yeah. My biggest thing is everyone's like, they get hung up on what the pressure is. I'm like, look, the pressure just correlates to a temperature. We work in temperatures. Pressure just correlates to a temperature. Think about temperatures. That's all we care about is temperatures. And to get people to understand that, and once they understand that, like, oh, it makes sense. I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit what the pressure is. That pressure is telling me what the temperature is. I care what the temperature is. Dude, if I have a head pressure, if my temperature is, 160 degrees, I'm like, saturation temperature, I got something wrong here. I shouldn't be that hot. Like,
dude, that's my thing. Like, people will be like, oh, I'm working on this box and it's 404 and the pressures are blah blah blah. I'm like, what are the temperatures? Because honestly, I don't have pressures memorized like
Oh
that.
yeah.
I'm like you. I only know pressures in relations to temperature. So tell me what the evap temperature is. Tell me what the condenser temperature is. Tell me the box temp, the ambient temp, and what do we got as far as superheat. Aside from that, don't tell me we're at 50 and 225 or whatever. That doesn't mean jack squat to me.
Yep, 100%.
For real. I get a lot of guys that'll call me up like, well, I'm working on this box. What should the pressures on 404 be? Well, I mean, that depends. Do you have a condenser coil packed full of grease or you got,
Right.
ABC, air before conditioning? If you're not moving air, you're not conditioning anything. So it's, when they call me up, just tell them right off the bat, whatever it is you're trying to figure out with those pressures, all there are is a guidepost. If you're running a 450 head pressure, that means that somebody's jumped out a pressure switch and you've got a dirty coil. Start looking there. Outside of that, those pressures mean nothing to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So if you ran into some kid on the street, he asked what you did, or even if you're working in an Arby's or a Sonic on a machine, and the fry cook's asking you questions, and he's thinking about, maybe this is a job he'd like to try, what would you tell that young person, if they were asking you about, what you do, who you work for, and how to get into this industry?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you exactly what I tell them now. Hey, man, my address is 1382 Notch Road. Come by and fill out an application. Let's see what you got. If you're really interested in elevating your status, if you want to move from fry cook to a guy that repairs fryers, come give it a shot. We'll give you a shot if you've got the right attitude. Because again, you can teach skill, you can't teach attitude. Some of the best technicians we've got, we pulled out of situations exactly like the one you just said. Somebody wanted to make a career change. And I can tell you, having been on both the white collar side and the blue collar side of the business, I would not trade the blue collar side for the white collar side in a million years. Not to say there's anything wrong with the white collar side, but if you like to solve problems, if you want to have a career that will not be, when I talk about IT, so many of the guys that I worked with back in the days, their jobs are now being, there's a guy in India working for 12 cents an hour doing that same exact job that he used to do because, you can outsource software development. You cannot outsource what we do for a living. There's no call center that will show up with a pair of gauges and fix your walk-in freezer at 7:00 on Saturday night. So I tell kids all the time, like, if this is even remotely interested in and you think you want to elevate your future, you think you want to get a stable career, come fill out an application. Let's see what you got. That's my very short answer on that.
That's what I tell them too. I'm like, hey, you want a job? I have all the time kids at McDonald's or Taco Bell. They ask me questions like, dude, you want a job? Here, go to the application. I said, we have, a training program. We can do something if you're interested. And you know what? 9 out of 10 of them never apply. So, unfortunately, I probably like it. I mean,
well, luckily for me, we work in the troubleshooter side of our business. We stay extremely focused. We don't advertise. We've never advertised in all the years we've been open. It's all been word of mouth, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Word of mouth is the best advertisement you could possibly ask for, and we've got some really good, really quality accounts, and we see these guys every single week. So, we'll be in the same store. So you learn quickly. It's usually the fourth or fifth conversation with that fry cook where he's like, well, hey, and what have I got to do to get in this business? And by that point, you figured out if that kid is actually going to be, is that kid playing on Snapchat when he should be, sweeping a floor? Or is that kid, speaking to his manager with respect, handling the customer with respect, taking his job seriously? By the time that kid actually asks if he wants that job, you already know pretty much everything you need to know about him. So it's that I could go forever on that, but yeah, it's a fertile ground.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are scared to hire someone younger because they have that stigma, like, oh, they're young, they don't want to work, and that's not the case at all, man. Like, a lot of people aren't given a chance because they're young, and people just think they don't want to work. Give somebody a chance, let them try, let them learn. It may not work out, but you never know. You may have the next best tech, out there, and he may just be cooking fries or flipping burgers at, some restaurant just because he's never had a chance or someone showed interest in him.
Mm-hmm. And I think the thing is too, like every generation is different, right? So we're different than our parents and our grandparents, where our kids are going to be different than us. So a lot of managers and employers don't want to put the effort into seeing what actually motivates, the younger generation. They want to hire a bunch of people that are them. But I mean, let's be real. We can only keep hiring 40 and 50-year-olds for so much longer before they're retired. You know what I mean? So it's like, bro, learn how to get the new generation interested and motivated, see what's important to them, and then start adapting your business and start adapting the industry to meet that. Because when they start taking over, they're gonna have to do the same thing to the generation that comes up after them. It's just how we are.
Yeah, so that's one of the things when you talk about family business. I could double back on that. My father was when he was there. You showed up at 7:30, not 7:31, 7:30. If you were not there at 7:30, that was a monstrous problem, and it became a problem for the rest of the day. I've had to learn to adapt. I've got some new guys now, and one guy in particular. Honestly, my wife actually found him. He's the son of a friend of I couldn't even tell you. It's some kind of Princess Bride sort of scenario. But anyway, this kid is phenomenal. He picked up on especially the electro-free side quickly, which is not easy to do. If you're coming from, he had a limited amount of experience doing preventive maintenance work for a larger company around here, and never worked on much refrigeration at all. And he's picked this up extremely rapidly. He actually just got back from the factory. He was there for training last week. But I've had to be flexible because he'll come rolling in 7:35, 7:38, and I'm still in this mindset. You got to be there right at 7:30. And I've had to kind of relax myself a little bit and realize that, hey, for the most part, we're all just kind of doing the camaraderie thing till 8 o'clock in the morning anyway. So is it really, do I really want to push a tech out the door over a couple of minutes in the morning when he could be a phenomenal? Because when he's on the job, he does a great job, and he will stay until the job's done. He's sitting in Wilmington at 4 hours away at noon. He doesn't bitch at all about it. He goes, he gets the problem solved, he comes back. So if he shows up a little bit late in the morning, my brain is still like, you can't do that. But logistically, if you're not willing to adapt to, the younger generation and their sort of laissez-faire approach to that schedule, then you're going to find yourself, just like you said, with 40 or 50-year-olds who are like, screw this, my body's too old for it.
Yeah, that's a great point, because my biggest pet peeves to be like, I was one of those people who's like, oh, you're supposed to be at 7:30, you better be at 7:15.
Yeah.
And that's just my outlook on everything. And when my son started working with me, man, he started driving separate. Like, he'd show up like 5-10 minutes late. I'd be in the truck just
boiling.
He'd pull up and jump out ready to go. And I'd just be like, where you been? And that's hard to not, do. I've noticed a lot of times these younger guys, I mean, they don't want to work 1 million hours. They want to work 40, 45 hours. If they're on call, they'll work what they need to. But most times they're not killing themselves like, I did when I first started. I was like, you give me every hour I can get. And I don't know if that's just because I didn't make as much as some of these guys probably make now, but that's hard.
I think priorities have changed with the younger generation versus our generation. My main thing is, I mean, as long as you kill it when you're supposed to, I'm cool. You know what I mean? So handle your on call when you're supposed to. You know what I mean? Suck it up. It's part of the job, and kill those 40 hours. Now, you're not gonna show up, 10 minutes late to every job and then slack. But if the job starts at 8, I mean, and instead of getting there at 7:45, you get there right at 8, but you're killing it until lunchtime. We take a lunch break, then from lunch till the job is done, or 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever, you're killing it. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna complain. I'm inside, I'm like, let's get this crap started. I want to get going. I want to move on to the next thing. But like, if not, we're gonna be stuck. You know what I mean?
That's me.
Yeah, when they show up late, I'm screaming on the inside, but I'm having to do this whole like, calm down. It's a different generation.
Yep, I've been there, man.
They use Snapchat. They look at me like I'm old for using Facebook. Like, I feel like Facebook came out last week. That's how old I am. So,
well, I go back to my memories, and they're like 14, 15 years ago. And I'm like, oh man, Facebook, how did it last this long? I remember MySpace. It came and went, and I'm like, I liked MySpace better. You could play music on your wall and all kinds of stuff. So.
Yeah, and everybody had Tom. Tom was your first friend, man.
Tom was fun, man.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just weird to think about it because when I first came back to the family business, and it seems like yesterday for me. to get to a job, you still had to go to the big, huge laminated map on the wall and find your grid. And now these guys are like, did you not have smartphones back then? It's like, no, we barely got out of rotary phones.
Yeah, when GPS came out, you're like, what is this fancy thing?
Yeah.
Used to call tech support from the customer's phone in the restaurant.
Exactly.
Yep.
Or send a carrier pigeon, whatever it's.
I remember when I first started, we had the Nextel Direct Connect where we'd call our parts people and like tell them what parts we need for a job. So you'd be like, chirp, chirp, and then you'd have to talk. And that was the weirdest thing in the world. So I could
most trouble I have. Sorry, go ahead.
Most people talk about like the radios, the two-way radios where everybody could hear your entire conversation and like people like flipping out and cussing people out and screaming boss over them, people getting fired over them and stuff. I'm like, man, that was some wild times back then.
Yeah, the most trouble I ever got in was before my dad started his business. He worked for another company around here. And he took me with him on a lot of ride-alongs when I was like, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And in the summertime. And they had this two-way radios, like you said, but, it was the one where everybody in the whole company could hear you broadcasting over it. And they kept calling my dad on the radio, and I was in the truck, and he was in with the customer. And I picked up the radio. He's in with a customer right now, and there was just dead silence. And next thing I know, he comes out of the truck. He's like, what have you been doing? Oh, I was just telling the people in your office that you were inside. And he's like, you're kidding me. I can't believe you called them and let them know that you were in my truck. So, yeah, this two-way radio's got my ass handed.
That's funny.
Well, it wasn't me at the time, I'll tell you that.
So we're coming over an hour. It's been a great conversation, John. I appreciate you coming on. You're a huge asset to our industry. Keep up the rap game on LinkedIn. If you're not following John, I will tag him in his LinkedIn. You guys can go follow him there. But he's a great asset for the industry. He's been in it for a long time. Came and gone and came back and is killing it over there. So I'm excited to finally have you on here. And, Rich speaks highly of you. You guys talk quite a bit. You guys, you're in the same market, but you're respectful of each other's customers, that kind of thing. And that's really cool that you guys can have that relationship and build that. So anything else you want to close on?
Well, the one thing I will tell you, and I'm not paid or sponsored in any way by Viper Technologies, but I will tell you that the advent of those guys hitting the field, and I need to make this very clear to anybody that might be watching. I've received no benefit from this, but the fact that I keep seeing this logo in the top right of my screen, if you talk to any of those guys, let them know that we're all extremely appreciative of the products they've made, because they far surpass, especially in the kitchen environments, a lot of the stuff that we've been working with for years. Mm-hmm. Big fan of Wet Rag, big fan of the Viper foaming coil cleaner. It's been a game changer for our kitchen PM. So that sounded like an advertisement, but it's pretty much my only opportunity to interface with those guys directly, so I took it.
Yeah, they're great people, man. That stuff is NSF rated. It's kosher. Like, it's made for kitchens. It's made for food processing plants. I mean, I used to use this one stuff. It's plastic coil or something. I don't know what it was. It said citrus-based, and you'd spray it in a walk-in on the evaporator, and your eyes would start watering, and you start gagging because it stunk so bad. Yeah. I can go to walk in, and I can shut the evaporator fans off, and I can brush it out, and I can spray some Viper on there and turn it back on. I'm like, that smells good in here. This is great.
Yeah. They make some really, really, you can kind of tell that those guys used to be technicians because their products.
Yeah, I need to have John Pastorello on, because, like you said, he's a technician and a chemist, and like he got sick of toxic chemicals are just killing and beating up techs, and he worked as wonder, and it's a family-owned company out in California, and they're killing it. So
yeah, they're doing a great job. So, hey guys, it was a pleasure talking to you guys. I appreciate the opportunity, and
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, certainly, man.
Thanks for coming on. Have a good night, everybody.
Hey, you do the same. Take it easy.